Hey everyone, welcome in. This is Drake Radio coming to you with the latest Daredevil playtest. This is a specific test scenario where I wanted to try out an elf Daredevil at level 6 with a mighty +1 to the Constitution modifier, just to stress test a low HP version of the class. I also set up a not super optimized party to support this Daredevil, and the intent is to do a solo playthrough of an Adventure Society scenario so that I have sort of a representative game. I'm not, babying it. I'm not specifically picking out a battle map with good terrain set up for props or anything like that. And above all else, I'm avoiding taking it easy on the Daredevil. The enemies hate him specifically, but they still want to win, so we'll see if the Daredevil survives. Our Daredevil in question has +4 to Strength and 4 to Dexterity, +1 Constitution, the Elven +1 to Intelligence, +2 Wisdom, and a flat 0 on Charisma. We're rocking a +1 Striking Flail, +1 Hand Wraps just in case, some leather armor, and a lifting belt as the relevant equipment. Also in here there is a lesser healing potion that I forgot to note down. Our ancestry and background is not super optimized. Whisper Elf didn't end up mattering. Nimble Elf, though, getting us up to a 35-foot move speed is pretty good for a Daredevil. And Ancestral Suspicion didn't come into play here. Relevant skills, we've of course taken Athletics up to Expert. We have Sailing Lore also up to Expert, which didn't end up mattering, and Thievery up to Expert, so we have some out-of-combat utility. Acrobatics, Craft, and Diplomacy are all trained, along with one or two more skills that didn't come up. As far as skill and general feats go, Die Hard is there for free. At level 3, the Daredevil took Toughness to get 6 extra HP, which could just make the difference. Underwater Marauder comes from the background. Titan Wrestler, Rapid Mantle, and additional lore Sailing round out the selections to aid with all those athletic maneuvers. For Daredevil feats, our starting feats were Scrambling Retreat to give us a bit more survivability. If you don't know what this one is, you use your reaction, you get +2 to your AC, then you get a half movement stride away from the thing attacking you, and they are allowed to stride towards you. Forceful Kickoff Stunt is one of the risky/press Daredevil feats. This one is an acrobatics check against Fortitude to leap away from the opposition and push them 5 to 15 feet, I think, under critical success, away from you. Level 2, I ended up taking another level 1 feat to grab Wheeling Pole Stunt. This is another press risky maneuver. This one uses athletics against the opponent's reflex AC or DC to grab them, take a step, and then hopefully slam your opposition into a wall. Level 4, we took Exhilarating Athlete. It gives you a bunch of different little bonuses to movement when you have adrenaline. And then finally for level 6, Rushing Stride lets you take a single action to do a stride and a strike. You can only do this if you don't currently have adrenaline, and you are off guard to everybody except your chosen target after you make the strike. So it's a bit risky, but it's even more action compression in an already great action compression class. Next up, we've got the rest of the crew. We've got an Orc War Priest of Varg. This is a Harm font, Great Axe wielding War Priest. He's got the Knowledge Domain spell and Heavy Armor. He also has a Staff of Healing and 4 heal spells prepared, a level 1, 2 level 2, and a level 3. We've got a Human Oread Monk. He's a Tiger Stance Monk with the Medic Dedication and Standstill. Notably, he took Feather Step instead of Shield Block for his level 3 general feat. So not super prioritizing survivability for this guy either, but with Monk AC and a shield to raise, he is pretty survivable. Finally, a Fetchling Imperial Sorcerer rounds out the lot. She can use Arcane Evolution to get an extra heightened spell. And the main spells she had for this scenario are Summon Undead, which is the one Arcane Evolution is heightened, Force Barrage, Enlarge, Fireball, and Haste. The mission that's being played out here, which again I picked after putting this party together, without looking at all the details, was Pathfinder scenario, I guess it's Season 3, Scenario 9, something like that, the Secluded Siege. I got all of Season 3 from Humble Bundle a while back, and this particular scenario involves traveling to Osirian to help out a Pathfinder lodge that's being attacked by a bunch of undead, which is kind of rough if you've got a harm cleric, but that is what I ended up picking. I did make one small change in that there were 2 low difficulty encounters, and I scaled both of them up to moderate difficulty in order to make it a better challenge for this playtest. So, getting into it, there were some skill checks. The Daredevil's trained proficiencies in diplomacy and craft and his expert proficiency in thievery meant he actually had a decent amount of ways to contribute in skill checks. I've seen some concerns that the Daredevil is purely a athletics and acrobatics check, but I don't think, at least this particular Daredevil, didn't need both of those skills to expert, so he could spread out a little bit more. And taking an elf specifically gives you an extra trained skill, which also came into play here. The scenario kind of pits you off against 2 low difficulty encounters and then 1 severe difficulty encounter. And stunting on the player level -4 and player level 3 enemies in the low difficulty encounters, it does feel cool, and I'll show you the first of those 2 encounters here in a minute, but I don't know how great it is as far as playtest data goes. I don't think anyone's worried about the Daredevil's ability to deal with player level -4 enemies, but it is kind of interesting to see. These encounters, as well as the associated skill checks, did use up 2 spells from the Sorcerer and 1 spell from the Cleric. The Cleric's Knowledge Domain ability also came in pretty handy with these things, so, you know, it's a surprisingly good domain. I'd never tried it out before. The first combat is in what they call the Hall of Recognition. It's pretty straightforward. We've got a bunch of undead bursting onto the scene from the left side of your screen. It includes 2 level 3 animated statues, 2 level 3 wights, and 2 level 2 ghasts. The change I made from the original was adding a second animated statue to bring this up to a moderate difficulty encounter. The group of adventurers didn't roll great for initiative, so we're coming into a screenshot here from after most of the enemies have moved, and a couple of the party members, but it's right before the Daredevil's turn, and you can see our elf here is right in the thick of things, surrounded by 2 ghasts and 2 wights. The Daredevil starts his turn by using a rushing stride to go back and take a swing on the ghast that is threatening the Sorcerer. This hits and does a little bit of damage. Then he follows up with a daring stunt to move into position and try and slam a wight into a pole for some stunt damage. This ends up missing. So then with his third action in this 5-action turn, the Daredevil is able to keep moving and get back to safety after making himself off guard to most of his opponents. During the enemy turn, one notable thing that happens is the ghast that was, well, you can see the arrows there. This particular ghast chases down the Daredevil, takes a swing at him and hits, prompting the Daredevil to use Scrambling Retreat. This pulls the Daredevil back a ways and the ghast follows up. So now we have one enemy relatively out of position, and the Daredevil is in position to use a prop for propelling strides again, after using it 3 times last turn. So starting his second turn, the Daredevil uses Rushing Stride once again to move up and attack this ghast, and then uses Daring Stunt to move again with propelling strides into position to attempt a shove on this animated statue. Unfortunately, the Daredevil rolls double ones on the stunt damage, and that's all absorbed by the 6 construct armor that the statue has. So for his third action, the Daredevil just kind of slinks away with a regular old stride, again with the propelling strides bonus from being next to one of those pillars. As you can see, there are only 2 enemies left alive at this point, and the rest of the party is able to clean them up fairly easily. So, conclusions. That was a 2-turn combat from the Daredevil's perspective, and having a 5-action turn plus a reaction that gives you an extra half a stride feels amazing. Again, we're stunting on, no pun intended, player level -4, or I guess in this case, mostly player level -3, player level -4 enemies. The Daredevil's AC is on par with all the other marshals, so he doesn't really feel threatened by these low-level enemies. There is a reason why I didn't put both of the fights in this Pathfinder scenario against low-level enemies on the screen. The risk from using Rushing Stride, where you become off guard to most of your enemies, is notable, but it's not too bad if you can use your Daredevil mobility to keep out of the middle of things. The other notable thing is I didn't feel the need to use any of the risky / press feat actions because the enemies are pretty weak and it was better just to go for strikes and keep moving most of the time. All right, so now we'll jump ahead to the final combat of this Pathfinder Society scenario. Here we've got a showdown in a dry cistern against a severe encounter. On the screen here you can see a Shambler Troop, which is this big block of little zombies here. That's a level 4 enemy, so 2 levels under our level 6 party. We've got 2 Zombie Brutes, which are only level 2. They're player level -4 enemies. We've got a Zombie Hulk, which is this big guy who is level 6, just like our party, and a Mummy Guardian, the lone person standing back at this portal that the undead are coming through. And that's another level 6 enemy. So turn 1 is just positioning and buffing. The undead all run forward, and the party moves into position with Enlarge being cast on the monk and Bless being cast by the cleric. Before the Daredevil's turn, you can see a little bit of damage has been done to the 2 Zombie Brutes. One was taken out by a flurry of blows from the monk, the other one was hurt by probably the cleric. So now let's see what our Daredevil can do. The Mummy has also advanced into range of him. Mummy only has 20 feet of movement, so all it could really do is just make all its strides. Starting off here then, the Daredevil takes a swing at the Zombie Brute and gets some damage in with no attack penalty. Then he goes for a Whirling Throw maneuver. This one slams the Mummy into the wall for a little bit of stunt damage, and then lets the Daredevil step away. Finally, he tries an unarmed strike against this Zombie Brute, and it misses. Nice and simple. The enemy does retaliate. The swarm of zombie shamblers moves up and does a little bit of damage to all of the frontliners. The Zombie Hulk moves forward and uses a single action to swing at the monk and the Daredevil, getting some good damage on both of them. And then the Mummy attacks the Daredevil, and this actually goes pretty well for our hero. The Daredevil uses his Scrambling Retreat to boost his AC up, and the Mummy misses him with the initial strike. This does break the grab, though, because the Daredevil moves, releasing the grab, and then the Mummy follows. Luckily, at this point, 2 cool things happen. First of all, the monk has Stand Still, which lets him do a reactive strike when somebody moves in his threat range. So he gets a good punch on the Mummy there. Then, because of the difficult terrain from these zombie shamblers, who have, again, moved up at this point, the mummy isn't fast enough to chase down the Daredevil. So when it's all said and done, the mummy has to use an additional move action to catch up to the Daredevil, and then misses him with the third action strike. So at the start of the Daredevil's turn, you can see him and the monk have taken some hits here. Everyone else is still pretty healthy, and the monk has moved back and taken a good chunk off of the mummy, and it's time to do some work. So the Daredevil starts off with a rushing stride. And I didn't say this last turn, but it's important to note that you can do a rushing stride without moving. It's different from daring stunt in that way. So this is a stationary rushing stride to get adrenaline and do attack with the Daredevil's flail on the mummy. Then after that, the Daredevil moves and does a whirling toss, or wheeling toss, sorry, which now is okay because I did that 0-foot move with my other attempt. This succeeds, once again, pulls the mummy in, and that's all well and good. During the enemy turns, some more stuff happens. The mummy continues to try to harass the Daredevil, getting another good hit on him, and pursuing. So that's great. The monk is sticking on the mummy and getting some more damage in there. So in the Daredevil's turn, he's able to use his first action to make an attack and finish off the mummy. His second action here can be a rushing stride to move up and take an unarmed swing and do just a little bit of damage to this Shambler troop. You can see they're at 33 out of 90 hit points, so this isn't enough to finish off one of the sections of the troop, which is mildly unfortunate. And then with his third action, the Daredevil again repositions against a wall to get the propelling strides bonus and be safely out of the way. The Shambler troop gets a pretty good hit off, getting the Daredevil down to 19 hit points. Also in this mix, the Cleric has used a heal at some point, I believe, to get the Daredevil up to double-digit hit points again, which is important to note, but also that's kind of what the Cleric signed up for, so I don't think that's necessarily a knock against the Daredevil. So with his turn, the Daredevil can start off with another great rushing stride to move a big 5 feet and finish off the Shambler troop. He can then use a daring stunt, using the enlarged monk as a prop to get the extra movement, to go around and get a flanking position on the zombie brute. Flanking doesn't actually matter for trip, but it's still cool that the option is there. This got a successful trip, and then finally with his third action, or fifth action if you're counting, the Daredevil gets a big 45-foot move to once again get back to safety and to leave the tripped enemy alone, where the weakness hitting tiger strikes from the monk can finish it off next turn. So, wheeling throw, got the wrong name there. It seems solid when it can target a vulnerable save. I did notice in reviewing this footage, I think I might have used it wrong though. Both of the times I moved the mummy and then also did stunt damage as if I had moved them into terrain. You can't do a 5-foot move and also interrupt that 5-foot move to hit terrain, I don't think. So that's like 46 plus 8 damage that shouldn't have been done to that mummy. Bit of a mistake, and it does make me think that whirling throw stunt is quite difficult to use correctly. Have to iron that out a little, I suppose, in my own play, or maybe it should just be 10 feet by default on a success. That might be too much. Hard to say. Player level equivalent enemy sticking on my low health Daredevil is definitely a serious threat, though. The mummy really was stuck on that Daredevil and nearly took him out. Um, the Mummy has a pretty strong ability that helps it get extra damage if it lands a hit with its fist. And that meant my on par AC wasn't as effective as it had been in the last fight. Um, Finally, having a buddy in the Monk who's got a reactive strike that procs on movement is huge when you are tripping your opponents and going for scrambling retreat. Um, you've got your enemies doing extra move actions all the time, and it means that they can't just stand there and swing. They kind of have to deal with stand still from the monk or reactive strike from whichever other martial you might be allied with. Enlarge is good on a monk anyway. If you're able to hit with both of your Flurry of Blows attacks, it means you're getting a lot of bonus damage from Enlarge. But also having an extra prop on the battlefield with Enlarge feels good as the Daredevil. And it feels like you're doing good tactics, which is always a nice thing in Pathfinder. This was also why the Sorcerer had Summon Undead as a heightened spell. In the fight I didn't put on the screen here, she used it to summon a large zombie, which was another stunt prop that the Daredevil could use. Finally, Longsword would have been a much better choice than the Flail for our weapon on the Daredevil. I've got a hand free, so I don't need to worry about needing a way to trip or I think disarm is the other thing a Flail has. The extra damage and the ability to hit the zombie's slashing weakness with the longsword would have been very strong here for the Daredevil. So there we have it. 2 moderate fights and a severe one left the party hurt, but not too far down on resources. I kind of wanted to go a step further though. So I chained this into another moderate encounter against a level 8 young resurrection dragon. Dragons kind of hit above their weight class, and I didn't actually fully read the stat line, but it turns out resurrection dragons specifically stop you from healing effectively, which is pretty useful against this particular setup with all these injured people. So this jumps in after the party has repositioned a little. The cleric swapped his great axe for his staff of healing and has done some, I think, a single 2-action heal to bring the health up a little bit. There might have also been, no, I don't think there was any potions used. The dragon spent its first turn summoning a shadow. So that's the cloaked figure in the middle of the screen there. So that is the whole first round of combat. Second round of combat, before the Daredevil's turn, the dragon has flown forward. You'll see the monk has also done a little bit of healing with battle medicine. I think the cleric did a heal with its staff. And then the dragon used his breath weapon and brought everyone back down again a little bit. So you can see some substantial damage there. The dragon also is able to command its summoned undead for free, so that's why the shadow has moved forward and is 15 feet above the ground. It can fly. So the Daredevil starts off with the classic move of doing a daring stunt to head forward and trip the dragon. After this, it tried a whirling throw. It missed, and you can see the free step it gets there, even on a miss. And then the Daredevil ran away. Because there's no sense taking the 3 attacks a dragon can get if you've got 45 movement to fly away to safety. After this, the rest of the party finished off that shadow and did a bit of damage to the dragon. When the dragon tried to rise from prone, it did take a stand still hit from the monk. It then made a bite attack on the monk and flew 30 feet straight up in the air. So now we've got the Daredevil's turn on screen here. And I had to make a bit of a GM call on this one, but I think it's fairly legit. The monk uses his first 2 actions to move over to the wall beside the dragon, who again at this point is 30 feet up in the air. Then, with Daring Stunt, he climbs 30 feet straight up, 20 base plus the 10 from Propulsive Strides, which does work for climb speeds, and then lets go of the wall and attempts to trip the dragon on the way down. This is successful, so both of them fall prone and take 15 damage, and then the Daredevil can use his third action to stand from prone. On the dragon's turn, though, things don't go super well. It does take another stand-still hit, rising from prone, and then goes for a Draconic Frenzy. The Daredevil uses Scrambling Retreat to try and get away from the first attack, but is hit by the Tail Strike. The dragon is able to pursue and get off a Claw Strike on our hero here and finish him off. So our Daredevil is down for the count. His third strike misses on the sorcerer. Responding to this, the sorcerer moves over and heals the Daredevil. All right, so the Daredevil now takes an action to stand from prone. It does a Daring Stunt to reposition and trip the dragon successfully, and then attempts a Wheeling Pull. This fails, but it does let him use his free step to get back into prop range. On the dragon's turn, it is able to once again use a Draconic Frenzy. It does this from the ground because it doesn't want to stand. Takes out the monk with a critical hit. I made a small rules mistake here and treated it like it had a 10-foot reach on its claws. So it did try to attack the Daredevil, missed, and the Daredevil did a Scrambling Retreat to get further away, and then it also missed an attack on the Orc Cleric there. So with things being kind of dire, I didn't have people scrambling around to restore single-digit HP to the monk, as well as proc the Resurrection Dragon's reaction that gives it temp HP when something else tries to heal its opponents. Instead, the sorcerer just used a second-level Force Barrage, purely to get the +1 damage from Sorcerer's Potency. Took a good chunk off of it, and then the Daredevil here ran up, successfully tripped the dragon, missed a second attack with its fist, and backed off to safety. The dragon spent its turn trying to kill the cleric after it rose from prone. Nearly got it, but the cleric is an orc, so is able to use that orc ferocity and stay alive. The sorcerer uses another arcane barrage and nearly kills the dragon. And then, finally, the Daredevil moves back in, hits it with an unarmed strike, and finishes the fight. So, where does this leave us? Player level +2 dragon was definitely a challenge. Chaining a moderate encounter right after a severe encounter is kind of a rude move. Luckily, the reflex save on that dragon was manageable, and trips are really effective against lone, higher level enemies. The Daredevil's movement continued to be a key factor in keeping him alive. If you've got a single enemy that's reliably being tripped and wants to use a 2-action move like Breath Weapon or that Draconic Frenzy, it can't really spend an action to stand up, spend an action chasing the Daredevil, and then try to bite him. On the flip side, bringing in a dragon with anti-healing tech against a fairly wounded party is also incredibly nasty. I wouldn't recommend chaining Resurrection Dragon in behind a severe fight for most people unless everyone really knows what they're doing and is ready for a good fight. I think this demonstration kind of shows that this low HP Daredevil is not completely broken and unusable. It did take some hits and it did go down during the fight, but in the end, it was able to pull through and get the job done. So let's look at some stats. 100% of the 13 turns I've described for you here, the Daredevil was able to get adrenaline. Daring stunt is so good. You want to move, you want to use athletics maneuvers, so a single action that lets you do both means getting adrenaline is super easy, and you will do it 9 times out of 10. Then level 6, when you get rushing strike, you're able to just stand still and do a strike and get your adrenaline up. So yeah, there's no reason, if you take these particular feats, you will have a turn where it's difficult to get adrenaline. It's basically free. In these maps, which again I didn't pick specifically for the Daredevil, 93% of my 26 strides that I took got the 10-foot propelling stride bonus. Part of this is knowing things like enlarge or summon spells are a good way to get an extra prop on the battlefield. But part of this is just the fact that the Daredevil has so much movement. He can pretty easily go from prop to prop to prop and keep that boost up. Now, if I didn't have a nimble elf for the 35-foot movement speed, maybe this would have been a little harder. But I think it's pretty cool, and in my opinion, definitely worth going down a couple HP. I did calculate my movement per turn. The average was 60 feet a turn of movement, and the total was 790 feet of movement over 13 turns, not including that 30-foot fall fighting the dragon. This also meant I averaged 2 strides a turn. This does include the scrambling retreat reaction strides. So people say you can do all of this with a swashbuckler. I don't think that's the case. I don't think you're getting 2 strides per turn with an effective swashbuckler when you want to also grapple. You probably want to make a strike occasionally. You probably want to raise a shield or something. I don't really see it happening. Additional stats. In the 13 turns of combat here, I did 1 successful shove, 2 successful grabs, both with wheeling toss, and 5 trips. I attempted 10 maneuvers over the 13 turns, which was almost 1 a turn. I did get pretty lucky. My first attack hit 11 times out of 11. One of those was a miss that I saved with a hero point. My second attack was a little more statistically likely in that I hit with 5 out of the 10. Those second attacks I made, 2 of them were attempts at a shove, 4 of them were attempts at a fist attack, and the last 4 were wheeling toss stunt attempts. I did try 1 third attack and it missed. Surprise, surprise. Finally, I only did stunt damage 3 times in those 13 turns. This is mainly because the rushing strike and daring stunt gave me solid options instead of just going for a shove all the time to try and get stunt damage. And most of my enemies had high fortitude, meaning shoves weren't exactly the best call to make. So yeah, you can't really count on stunt damage, but sometimes it's nice. All right, so that is all I've got. Hopefully you enjoyed this look at the Daredevil class. I think I showed off its maneuverability and the types of maneuvers it tries to do fairly well. Let me know if I messed anything major up, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Thanks.